At the age of 35, guitar prodigy Stevie Ray Vaughan departed this world on August 27, 1990. His music had the power to captivate the entire globe, following the tragic downfall of a chopper in the misty Wisconsin hills. For millions of rock and blues enthusiasts, his passing was a tragedy, but for American music as a whole, it was a crushing blow. However, a tumultuous path lay behind the scorching solos and the image of a man playing his Stratocaster with an iron fist. After succumbing to alcoholism, cocaine, and the crushing loneliness that afflicted him, Stevie emerged from his addiction's clutches. After collapsing on stage in Europe and being transported to the hospital due to exhaustion, he returned to the stage, sober and stronger than before, and continued to write songs that praised self-control, faith, and clarity. There was more to Stevie Ray Vaughan than music. Rebirth was symbolized by him, a man who had fallen on hard times, yet had rediscovery through music. Tragically, fate removed him from this world just as he was beginning a fresh chapter devoid of drugs and delusions. A man full of paradoxes, intense yet lonely, calm yet raging inside, hid behind the ferocious glare on stage. In memory of a talent that was cut short far too soon, please post a comment stating, "Rip Stevie Ray Vaughan," if the music of Texas Flood, Pride and Joy, or Little Wing has ever impacted you. But their impact will endure forever. And come with us as we retrace the steps of the man who revived the blues and transformed his anguish into timeless music, a journey from darkness to light. Background: Stevie Ray Vaughan came into this world on October 3, 1954, in the dusty roadside bars of Dallas, Texas, a city in the South that was hot, poor, and resonant with the sounds of blues. Being the youngest son in a working-class household, Jimmy Lee Vaughan Sr.'s father, a World War II veteran, returned home with more than just wounds from the battlefield. He also brought unpredictable episodes of wrath caused by alcohol. The older Vaughan was a chronic drunk who was frequently unruly and a source of terror for Stevie and her tiny childhood home. To Stevie, there was no such thing as safety. He had to remain silent and careful should an eruption occur. The guitar was the only safety net that young Stevie could find in that dangerous world. He started learning at the tender age of 7 by watching his famous guitarist older brother, Jimmy Vaughan. With nothing more than an attentive ear, a delicate heart, and little hands brimming with aspirations and subtle fears, Stevie educated himself. No teacher, no official instruction. On late evenings when his father's drinking drowned out his mother's breathing, he would play anywhere he could find a quiet place, including his bedroom and garage. He found solace in music, which allowed him to break out from the constant state of obscurity. He persisted in playing despite receiving neither praise nor encouragement, as it was his sole means of self-expression. On evenings when other kids had memorable childhoods, Stevie would teach himself blues by listening to Freddie King, Jimi Hendrix, and Albert King albums. Stevie began singing at pubs in the Deep Ellum area, which was notorious for its high crime rate, drug use, and violent crime, by the time he was 15 years old. He matured at a rate no youngster should have, playing guitar till midnight for throngs of inebriated strangers, even though he was not yet of legal drinking age. The local musician scene exposed him to drugs, drink, and a frantic, chaotic lifestyle at a young age. An abyss that, in time, expanded into the addiction that tormented him for a long time. Stevie formally left high school at 17 years old and relocated to Austin, Texas, often called the live music center of the country. He had never made a choice just for himself before this. Along with his guitar, a few spare outfits, and innumerable unnamed emotional wounds, he set out. He had no intention of becoming famous there. All he desired was to be in a community that valued music and didn't dismiss it as meaningless. Childhood for Stevie Ray Vaughan was anything but idyllic. His guitar was the only thing that saved him from completely collapsing during those terrifying, lonely days. Emerging from that depth of despair, he embarked on a musical voyage that would transform the world in a way he could never have foreseen. Starting out in one's profession. In 1972, when Stevie Ray Vaughan arrived in Austin, he was a scrawny 17-year-old youngster with a beat-up Stratocaster and an unspoken ambition. However, he discovered something in this city that Dallas had never offered him before, a rhythm that coursed through every bar, street, and restless night. Freedom. Initially, Stevie would perform at seedy dive bars or at outdoor college festivals, anywhere there was electricity and an audience. His salary was modest, unrepresented, and lacking in quality recordings. Everything he played had a unique quality, though, as any listener could tell, something untamed and profoundly emotional, like Hendrix reincarnated as an unkempt Texan lad with sad eyes that never seemed to smile. While playing in local bands like Paul Ray and the Cobras, Cracker Jack, and the Nightcrawlers, Stevie honed his stage presence and confidence. It was all really a warm-up, though. The band that would accompany Stevie for the remainder of his career, Double Trouble, was founded in 1978. The original lineup consisted of just 3 instruments: guitar, bass, and drums. The stage became the center of attention as soon as Stevie reached for his guitar. Once Mick Jagger, yes, that Mick from the Rolling Stones, invited Stevie and Double Trouble to perform at a New York City private party in 1982, things started to turn around. A blues rock band without a record deal appeared on the largest stage in Europe at the Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland not long after, an unusual occurrence. Half of the Montreux crowd was shocked and half was uncertain, but David Bowie was floored. Bowie swiftly requested Stevie's guitar work for his forthcoming pop masterpiece, Let's Dance. In a Los Angeles studio, Jackson Browne graciously offered Stevie his own recording space, where the Texan lad could lay down songs without any scripts, pressure, or other distractions, just an amp and a quiet room. Stevie Ray Vaughan inked his initial recording deal with Epic Records only a few weeks afterward. A monumental shift was about to occur in his life. Even though it hadn't happened yet, the music business was all abuzz. His name remained a mystery to them, but they were certain that a monumental event was about to transpire. And at the helm of that movement was the same young man who had fled an intoxicated father with his guitar, who had to perform to make ends meet, and who had sacrificed his entire formative years so that he might bring his blues to life. A turning point in my career. No one anticipated that Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble's Texas Flood, a raw blues album recorded in a mere 3 days in Jackson Browne's studio, would cause a stir in a music industry engulfed in synth-pop and disco when it was released in June 1983. This was more than just a record. In Texas Flood, the musician sounded as though he were making a solemn commitment, a vow to himself, to life, and to the blues' long-lost souls. People got it right away when the first notes of excitement and pride were played. The blues live on. All it needed was a person who was wounded enough to revive it. Although Stevie wasn't the first guitarist to emerge in the 1980s, he was the first to fearlessly unleash his shattered and scarred Texas soul onto the stage, regardless of how raw or authentic it was. He was not a blues performer. It was his life. That is why Texas Flood was a watershed moment for both musicians and critics, in addition to being a gold-certified triumph and a Grammy nominee. Critics were quick to hail him as a phenomenon, and in 1983, he was named Best Electric Blues Guitarist by Guitar Player magazine and Best New Talent. Under the glare of the arena lights, a man who had before performed at Texas dive bars stood. Despite this, he remained unchanged. All that changed was that his noise could be heard no more. Unable to stand the weather debuted in 1984. While Stevie's technical prowess was already widely acknowledged, this record unveiled his true potential as a string storyteller, a singer capable of feedback, tremolo, and searing slides. Slight return, his cover of Voodoo Child, caused gasps from the audience. Similar to how Hendrix set fire to his instrument as a symbol of independence, Stevie was sacrificing himself to preserve the blues tradition. Even though the album was certified platinum, Stevie's real reward was the admiration of many who believed blues had died out. Following that was 1985's Soul to Soul. At this introspective crossroads, Stevie included keyboards, gave the arrangements more depth, and, for the first time, allowed his loneliness show. Songs like Give Up on Love and Ain't Gone have branched out from their original romantic themes. Addiction secretly reinforced its grip, but these confessions came from a spirit that refused to give up. At this time, Stevie was under increasing pressure to perform 200 nights a year while also facing brighter lights and a darker side of her own personality. This paradox was depicted in the 1986 film Live Alive. On stage, Stevie continued to writhe in agony and perform solos despite it all. However, behind the scenes, he was ravaging himself with a combination of cocaine and booze that he dubbed the Velvet Hammer. He had a total collapse at a German concert and was brought to the hospital, where doctors told him he wouldn't survive another year if he persisted. Finally, Stevie pulled the impossible stunt. Sobriety was his goal. He disappeared from the spotlight for over a year, not picking up a guitar, after checking into a Georgia rehabilitation center. When he got back, though, the cocky, rebellious Stevie wasn't there. Sober, modest, and more powerful than before, he had transformed into a new man. Everything came to a head in 1989 with In Step. With the title In Step, Stevie subtly acknowledged the 12-step program that had been instrumental in his recovery. The CD covered more ground than simply blues, from the wall of denial to tightrope. It was about coming clean, forgiving yourself, and finding solace in music. It was the pinnacle of his career's triumph. the last chapter in a brief but brilliant trip, and it earned him a Grammy. At the same moment when things were looking up, Stevie was clean, vibrant, and celebrated, all in preparation for a tour with Eric Clapton that would culminate at the Royal Albert Hall. The dreaded evening came. However, this was the one element that set Stevie Ray Vaughan apart from the rest. He continued to play as if this were his final chance despite knowing full well that he could lose it all. It was for this reason that Stevie's short but stellar career became an indelible part of the blues' contemporary annals. Life outside of music. Stevie Ray Vaughan's scorching guitar tone betrayed a complex inner life, but he could shake a whole stage with the flick of a finger. He lived each day as if he were fighting an uphill struggle, not only with his addiction but with himself, because he was lonely, vulnerable, and desperately needed affection but didn't know how to keep it. In the 1980s, when Stevie was at the peak of his fame, he also began abusing drugs and alcohol. As a result, personal relationships started to crumble. He dated Lindy Bethel for a long time, and then Jana Lapidus, an artist and model from Ukraine. His thoughts were still consumed with white powder and the arduous, disorderly travels. Not even love could steady him. Stevie was characterized by the women that crossed his path as a kind soul who listened attentively, but had a secret grief in his eyes at all times. He could be incredibly caring, like bringing flowers to a recording session for his fiancée, and then disappear for 2 weeks on an ill-planned tour. With all his heart, Stevie loved, yet he also hurt. In his private life, there was always an undercurrent of quiet volatility. It was never scandalous or full of loud tabloid headlines. A long-standing urban legend states that one of Stevie's most melancholy ballads, Lenny, was composed for an unnamed ex-lover. Some say she overdosed and died. The enigma surrounding this has never been resolved, but it seems to be intensifying Lenny's anguish, as if Stevie were communicating with an invisible entity that only he could perceive. When Stevie decided to clean up in 1986, he wasn't content to simply abstain from drugs and alcohol. After struggling with unhealthy habits and toxic relationships since his adolescence, he finally broke free. The woman who was with him at the moment, Jana Lapidus, later became his friend while he was healing. She bore witness to the shaking of withdrawal and the lonely evenings when he sat for hours to compose a few chords for a life that was at last finding new life. Unlike the typical family, Stevie never tied the knot, never grew a brood, and never established a home. However, his late-life epiphany allowed him to leave behind a lasting spiritual impact. He shared his story and supported AA programs frequently after he became sober, and he became more active in the recovery community overall. As a person who had made it through the hell he had created, Stevie appeared to know, deep down, that it was his duty to show others the path out. The only person publicly recognized as Stevie's fiancée at the time of his untimely death in the 1990 helicopter disaster was Jana Lapidus. As had always been the case, she stood silently by Stevie's brother and idol Jimmy Vaughan's side at the funeral. Quiet, unassuming, but profound and priceless. The home life of Stevie Ray Vaughan was far from ideal, but a man who never ceased seeking love was audible in all of his songs and solos. Rescue, in pursuit of tranquility. People will always remember Stevie not only as a musician, but as a person who longed to be heard before fading away like an unfinished goodbye, maybe because of the fragility he displayed beneath the blazing guitar. Tragic crash on the last night. Stevie Ray Vaughan took the stage at Wisconsin's Alpine Valley Music Theater on August 26, 1990. On a gloomy evening when the hills are shrouded in fog and a light drizzle falls. Legends such as Eric Clapton, Buddy Guy, Robert Cray, and Jimmy Vaughan, Stevie's older brother and longtime anchor, performed on the second night of a special blues concert. Little did anyone know that this would also mark Stevie's final performance of her career. Stevie appeared to transform into a tornado on stage as the 5 performers joined forces to play Sweet Home Chicago to finish the event. Every note was a silent tribute to the blues and a goodbye. He seemed to know there was no other possibility. He nodded, grinned, and used all of his resources. No one in the nearly 40,000-strong audience realized they were witnessing the final performance of a living legend, yet they all went into a frenzy of passion anyway. For chopper crews were on standby to transport the performers and crew back to Chicago following the performance. Jimmy relinquished his seat to his younger brother Stevie because of a last-minute adjustment that made only one seat available, even though they were originally intended to go together. Stevie, accompanied by 3 members of Eric Clapton's crew, boarded the airplane solo. Those involved include assistant Colin Smythe, bodyguard Nigel Brown, and tour manager Bobby Brooks. The helicopter belonging to Stevie took off from a landing pad on a nearby golf club at 1 in the morning on August 27th, amidst a heavy fog that enveloped the slopes of Alpine Valley. Neither low-visibility flying nor instrument-only navigation were part of the pilot Jeff Brown's certifications or training. Just seconds after takeoff, he became bewildered in the pitch black and lost his way due to the landing pad lights. A little over 1 mile from its takeoff point, the Bell 206B Jet Ranger slammed into the edge of a 300-foot ski hill little under 1 minute after takeoff. In an instant, all 5 individuals on board were dead. Debris lying in the icy Wisconsin fog. No flames, no pleas for rescue. As soon as word spread that Stevie Ray Vaughan had passed away, it rocked the blues community. Among the first to be summoned to the mortuary to identify the corpse were Eric Clapton and Jimmy Vaughan. There were no signs of intoxication in Stevie's system, according to the coroner's findings. After a long battle to regain his life, he passed away entirely sober. Omniflight Helicopters was sued by the families of the fatalities, including those of Stevie Wonder and Clapton, for the reckless assignment of an unqualified pilot during bad weather. The corporation settled out of court after months of inquiry, but the amount of compensation was never revealed. The National Transportation Safety Board's final investigation placed the blame on the pilot, saying that he or she was unable to fly in low visibility and failed to gain enough altitude. Tragically, Stevie Ray Vaughan passed away at the same moment he had rediscovered himself, fresh, sober, and more in love with life than ever. His untimely demise was a devastating blow to all those who held the belief that music and healing could ever truly alleviate suffering. However, the sound was the only thing that managed to survive the collision. To top it all off, Stevie was never really gone. Considerations for Stevie Ray Vaughan's legacy and influence, neither an extensive album catalog nor a trophy case will be found in his estate. Sadly, he did not survive to enjoy the fruits of his success for very long. Neither did he amass a business empire comparable to those of his contemporaries. But what truly cemented Stevie as an irreplaceable phenomenon in the annals of modern music was the terrible honesty, intensity, and shortness of his life and songs. The blues and rock communities were confused when he passed away. Notable figures like as Eric Clapton, Bonnie Raitt, Dr. John, ZZ Top, Jackson Browne, Stevie Wonder, and B.B. King were among the more than 1,500 mourners who paid their respects at his Dallas funeral. They came to pay tribute to a spirit they held in high esteem, not merely to bid farewell to a coworker. A crowd of almost 3,000 people braved the oppressive Texas heat outside the church to listen to Stevie's guitar reverberate through a recorded performance. A commemorative statue was erected at Auditorium Shores near the lake, where Stevie had once performed in 1993 by the city of Austin, where his career had begun. Although Stevie was not the most famous artist in Texas, he was the most beloved, and this made him the first to have a monument dedicated to him. In the same year, Martha Vaughan, Stevie's mother, set up a scholarship fund to help WE students. Even though Stevie had attended Griner Middle School in Dallas's Oak Cliff neighborhood before, she decided to drop out. And the place where the idea of a life free from poverty first occurred to him. There is more to Stevie's legacy than music. It is a message of hope because he died while still in recovery from his addiction, which he overcame through self-control and faith. Dallas has hosted the SRV Memorial Run for Recovery every year since 1994 to benefit the Ethel Daniels Foundation, which provides financial assistance to addicts unable to afford treatment. Among the many notable musicians who had known and loved Stevie Ray Vaughan, including Eric Clapton, Bonnie Raitt, Dr. John, Jimmy Vaughan, Buddy Guy, Robert Cray, and many more, was a tribute album dedicated to him in 1996. Since Stevie was a man who had really died and lived for his guitar, no one dared to try to emulate him. Artists who have made significant contributions to the fight against addiction are honored with the Stevie Ray Vaughan Award, which was officially established in 1999 by the Musicians Assistance Program. Those who have fallen and found their way back, like Stevie Wonder, have been honored. Among them are Eric Clapton, David Crosby, Alice Cooper, Ozzy Osbourne, Pete Townsend, Chris Cornell, and Jerry Cantrell. In a society that is notoriously hard on second chances, he became a symbol of hope. It was a long-awaited and very holy honor for Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble to be formally admitted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2015. The crowd went into a standing ovation as Jimmy Vaughan, brother of the recipient, came out onto the stage to collect the trophy. No prizes were necessary for Stevie to demonstrate his excellence. Everyone knew it. No more than one solo. Medals and sales figures don't tell the whole story of Stevie Ray Vaughan. Its eternal home is in the hands of that first-year guitar student who shivered through his or her first blues chord. It persists in the minds and souls of individuals who were formerly frightened, disoriented, and blamed for their own demise. until they heard the word tightrope and understood that staying balanced and continuing to walk is an accomplishment in and of itself. Because the accident did not claim Stevie Ray Vaughan's life. The second he mustered the courage to play as if it were his last, he became immortal and disappeared, ensuring that his fans would never have to say goodbye to him. Folklore and urban legend. Music was not all that Stevie Ray Vaughan left behind. His legacy lives on in the legends passed down from generation to generation, as if he had stepped out of the blues itself. The stories about Stevie continue to circulate even in our data-saturated environment. Remnants of his soul that persisted through the haze of his guitar. "I will sell my soul for the blues," supposedly Stevie once said. "All I want is to let the vibration travel through my body." If it's not legend passed down by diehard fans, then no one knows for sure that he actually said it. Everyone whose emotions were tugged along with his when they heard him play Tin Pan Alley or Riviera Paradise. Not only did he possess incredible talent, but he was also prepared to sacrifice himself to ensure that the blues would continue to thrive, which is why many compared him to Jimi Hendrix. The story of the bizarre dream that Stevie had the night before he passed away is one of the most chilling ones. According to what he shared with his pals, he had a dream in which he was painlessly floating through a white mist. In a low voice, he told Eric Clapton, "I sense something's about to change," following his last performance at Alpine Valley. The incident was disregarded until the helicopter disappeared into the fog and failed to land a second time. The story of Stevie's most loyal friend and beloved Stratocaster follows. A cherished